Good morning. Good morning. Good morning to the Limitless leaders. Welcome to Level Up for Limitless Leaders. We are live on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and YouTube, joining you every Thursday morning live at 8 a.m. Eastern. So I will say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And if you are catching us on the replay, thank you so much for joining us. We started a new series called The Importance of Leadership Development. Last week, we talked about why it is necessary for us to prepare leaders and how we can get past some of the toxic behaviors that we see in leadership, including not wanting to develop ourselves, not wanting to continuously learn and improve or see the same for others. Today, we want to talk about that terrible S word. Who can guess? Succession. We are talking about succession planning today. I have to say, at least in my experience, I've not seen where that is truly done well. And most often we see people scrambling at the point of someone's departure, trying to prepare for someone's to succeed them in that particular role. Succession planning needs to be a very important part of leadership development, particularly to engage potential leaders so that they can see that there is a path that they are tracking on, that they can be prepared for where they are headed, where they would like to head, and also so that there is continuity in the business, so that we are protecting our organizational and institutional knowledge. Too often we see things walking out of the door, information and practices and tools, techniques, strategies that walk away when people leave an organization. So we want to ensure that through succession planning and proper succession planning, that we are preparing people for what is next. Thank you so much for joining. I see my good friend there, Andrea. Good morning to you. And we will jump right in to this. Let me just get my share screen going. And we have to stop thinking about succession as a bad word. It is a very necessary exercise. And as leaders, that's the way we ought to think. For me, I always think of who is around me who could do my job. And so leaders have to get past the mindset of that insecurity and that fear of, oh, this person is coming to take my job. You should be interested in seeing who is around you who could take your job, because that means it allows you to transition into your next. Who would want to be stagnant in one position for 50 years without growing and moving into something else and making space in the organization for other people to grow? I believe it's a necessary cycle of life. We see it happening all the time. We see it in nature, right? A tree can grow, but the original leaves don't stay on the tree. Some leaves wither and die. Some leaves drop off. Some leaves and fruit are plucked off. There is always change. The branches are pruned. There's cut back so that it can grow back better, healthier. So we have to reframe how we think about transitions, career transitions. And the more we prepare for them, the easier it is for us to prepare other people for them and to move on ourselves. So what is succession? Very easy definition here is identifying, preparing, and placing leaders in vacating leader roles. Now, this is succession. Human resource planning, or what is typically known as manpower planning, is when you are thinking about all roles, because there are some roles that may be considered hard to fill. They may be very technical in nature, or they may require a lot of experience. Whatever that may be, you need time to prepare people to be able to fit that in the event that someone resigns or is involuntarily separated or whatever, unfortunately, God forbid, passes away, something along those lines. If roles are opened up, how are we going to fill those? So that is what is called manpower planning or human resource planning. But succession deals specifically with leadership roles and how you will fill those gaps once people move on. And in the same way, either they voluntarily separate, which is resign, they involuntarily separate, which may be a downsizing, redundancy, termination, or unfortunately, their demise. How do we fill these roles? So let's look at how we can identify, first of all, potential leaders in the organization. And of course, we ought to have an idea of what qualities and skills and knowledge that we're looking for in leadership. So we should have a good idea of what that role does, understanding exactly the tasks, the responsibilities, the qualities, the characteristics that's required for that role. And then that helps you to now identify who else in the organization can fill these positions. The way organizations do this can be varied. So you can leave it up to human resources to work along with department or divisional leaders to work through and create this process. You can have a leadership or management development program where potential leaders are identified and they're required to go through this program. Sometimes the program is a year long and it involves mandatory courses, perhaps cross training, immersion experiences, coaching, mentoring, travel, whatever it is that would prepare persons for leadership in general. So, as an organizational leader, you need to think about how you want to prepare and identify potential leaders. And you want it to be a very transparent and fair process. You don't want it to be where you are cherry picking, because you tend to, even though you can cherry pick and you have people that you have already noticed they have the potential, you want to reach out to department heads and divisional leaders for their recommendations, but you also want to be able to leave it open because you never know. We often overlook people because we think that people have potential and we may not pay attention to someone else, or we may not be exposed to someone else in every single department or unit, depending on the size of your organization. So you want to have a clear, transparent, fair process for people to engage in the program or apply for it, maybe interview for it. You determine the structure that is best suited to your organizational culture and needs. But what are some elements that we should look for? We should look at their personal and professional presence. People would say you always want to act the way that you want to be treated, right? Or dress the way you want to be addressed. All of these things. What is the level of presence for this person? Because potential leaders will have leadership presence. And what is leadership presence? It's maturity, it's self-control, it's knowing how to conduct yourself. It's about showing up, speaking well, right? So even it might be charisma, but not every great leader is charismatic. So we don't want to be caught up on the flash and dash personalities. You have people who have more low-key personalities who are very strong leaders as well. So that you want to make sure that they have personal and professional presence. We want to look at their image and reputation. How well do they get along with others? What do people say about them? How are they able to collaborate and work with others? What is their online presence like? How are they functioning in the organization? Thirdly, you want to look at their work ethic and organizational savvy. So this is their how they work. Now, this may be a bit controversial, and I love to make disruptive statements, but is someone that works a straight 9 to 5 somebody that does not show work ethic? Because there is a myth that the longer hours you work makes you a better employee, makes you a stronger leader. Is that the truth, or is that a myth? Working all of these excess hours does not necessarily make you a better leader. Work ethic should involve your approach to work, your ability to meet deadlines, your ability to handle multiple projects, that type of thing, right? How you approach your work, how you execute your work, the results that you get. And someone can do that very well within the 8 or 9 hours of a workday. So I just want to drop that little disruptive thought there that maybe we need to reframe, because leaders need work-life balance. So working 12, 14-hour days does not make you a better leader. It makes you an exhausted, burnt out leader. Hello, somebody. Now, yes, there are times when additional hours are required, but that should not be the norm. That should be because I'm working on something. I'm working on a project or a deadline that I need to get done. Not that that's your weekly expectation. Organizational savvy is your ability to understand the organization, your organizational awareness. That actually falls in emotional intelligence, your ability to know who are the influencers, how do you need to navigate, who do you need to go to, who has the answers in an organization. Some organizations can be a minefield, just tiptoeing around sensitive issues and all of that. But as a potential leader, you need to know that. You need to know how to navigate. You can't be a bull in a china shop coming into an area thinking, okay, well, I know how this should go and I'm just going to do it. No, you need to be savvy. You need to be able to navigate with finesse in your organization. Fourth is technical and social competence, and it's kind of tied to that one as well. So your technical competence, of course, deals with your ability to do the job. How good are you at doing the actual job? Because you want to have a level of expertise or mastery in your work as a potential leader. And of course, your social competence is your ability to collaborate and connect and support and be a part of a team. Finally, emotional intelligence. And anything I do, you will find that in there because it is so important. We lead from the inside out. We lead from our mindset out. And so we have to have, as leaders, a good handle on understanding ourselves, understanding our triggers. If you move into leadership, even as a person, you need to know these things. But when you move into leadership, this is important because you would be surprised to know what triggers you. So I talked about earlier on leaders that may be insecure. Are you insecure about someone showing more expertise in an area than you? Are you triggered by someone challenging your idea or challenging a directive, saying, I think we could do it this way? Do you get angry? Do you crawl into a corner and you're stewing about it all night? What are your triggers? You need to know this as a potential leader because you need to know how you're going to handle yourself. And are you going to be able to control your emotional state, control what you say, and how you build and maintain relationships with your team members and your peers? How do you handle criticism and feedback, right? So all of these things impact your ability to lead. And these are just some of the qualities that we should be looking for in potential leaders. How do we now prepare potential leaders. So that was identifying them. This is now preparing them. So, as I mentioned before, organizations may have a leadership or management development training program, or sometimes they call it manager in training. Whatever you call that, there should be some level of preparation through training, experiential learning, perhaps some online learning, definitely some mentorship and coaching, and so forth. I've highlighted a few areas, and of course, this is not a limited list. This is just a few examples of some things that potential leaders need to know as they fill these roles. And that would be, of course, leadership skills and understanding the difference between leadership and management. So, management focuses on managing resources, managing budgets, managing inventory, managing the team as far as having controls in place and processes and so forth. Leadership skills deals with now the people side, the visionary side, the communicative side, all of these things that you would need to be able to know and do as a leader. So, leadership, management skills, HR skills. Now, these are, I guess we would call them the peopling skills, but having a solid understanding of company policy, of employment law, of how to manage performance, how to have performance conversations, how to give performance feedback, how to coach people, whether they are high flyers or they're struggling, how to inspire people, how to discipline. These are very important skills for leaders to have, and you don't get them by osmosis. And in one of the last series that we did, we talked about reverting to our default leadership setting, which is either how I was led or how I prefer to be led. But as an effective leader, you ought to know the human resource aspects of leadership. You can't get away from the peopling. Sorry to tell you. And then, of course, strategic thinking and planning. This is a leader's ability to plan ahead, to come up with goals and objectives and strategy to get results. And that is on a holistic level in the business and also with people. So as a leader, you should also be thinking about how you're planning your resources. And maybe you have people retiring in your unit or department. Maybe you have someone who has expressed an interest to transfer to another area, leaving a vacancy. Are you thinking ahead? Are you looking ahead at the future of what you do? Is this something that maybe will be obsolete in a few years, or something that has to pivot because of the times that we're living in? Thinking about all of these things and planning for it futuristically and in the present. And finally, your technical skills. So even though we may be very good at what we do, there are still aspects of our technical capacity that we could still learn. Is there maybe a certification that you need to go after? Or are there certain courses that you may need to do to understand different components or factors of the job, and preparing yourself for that, right? It might be understanding budgets, understanding the financial terminologies, reading financial statements or profit and loss statements, having the business acumen is what we call that, right? Knowing the business and what it means, understanding different aspects of the organization. So you may be in IT, but you may still need to understand, what does sales and marketing do? What does executive leadership do? And so forth, right? So these are, I feel, some key areas that you should think about when you are developing a program, or at least a system, a process to prepare potential leaders. But one thing you want to avoid is just throwing people in the deep end of leadership without any preparation at all. You are setting them up to fail. You want them to get that preparation so that they understand the full scope of what is required, so they can prepare their minds and their technical skills and the other skills that are needed to be successful in the role. The last thing that I want to talk about this morning, this afternoon, this evening, or whenever you're tuning in, is the great transition. And this is now placing people in these roles. Why is this important? This is important because we have to prepare everyone that's involved in this transition process on moving on. I have seen too many horrible examples of people who are holding on to positions for dear life. So they're holding on to information. They don't want to share. They don't want to prepare that next person. So it makes it very uncomfortable. We put that new coming person into a situation where maybe they have to start from scratch. They have to learn things for themselves. And it makes it a very bumpy ride for everyone. And so I believe that as organizational leaders and human resource leaders, that we have to prepare people for these transitions. Transitions are usually not that easy because there is a period of grieving. We can't get away from that. You, in any change, there is loss, even if it's positive change. So this person that may be moving on, maybe they got promoted, right? Maybe there are two promotions happening. So we have this person who is a director that's being promoted to a senior director. And so now you're promoting a manager to get into that director role, and that director is moving into that senior director role. Both of those candidates could experience a sense of loss and fear and this feeling of insecurity because of the unknown factors involved. Once we've mastered a job, we get comfortable in it. And so now with this change, it means that there's a learning curve. There are some things that I'm going to have to learn. There are some new skills that I'm going to have to learn. There's a new peer group that I have to now assimilate in. There's a peer group that I'm leaving behind. I may even have to leave my office space or my workspace. Maybe now I'm moving from working in an open office area to my private office. And now I feel isolated. I feel like I don't have a group anymore. I don't belong. These are the things that we have to think about when people are transitioning, when people are retiring, thinking about, what is next for me? Am I ready for this financially, mentally, otherwise? What's the plan? I've maybe worked for 30, 40 years, this routine of getting up every morning with this same thing. And we say in our careers, I am so tired. I can't wait until I cannot do this anymore. But then when that time comes, you're like, okay, now, how do I fill my mornings? And we may say that it's so easy. Oh, I know exactly what I'm going to do when I don't have to work anymore. But for some people, it's not that easy. Right? I mean, I have visions of myself just having these leisurely mornings where I could just wake up and meditate and work out and drink tea on the porch and all of these kinds of things. I know exactly what I would do if I did not have to get up and go to work. But after that, people are like, well, then what? And this brings on a different question, and perhaps I can do another series on this, but that really centers around your sense of purpose and your sense of identity. And quite often people attach their sense of identity, worth, and purpose to a job. And if you understand purpose, you understand that it is a calling that transcends a job or career. If you are able to execute your purpose within a career, you are blessed. You are one of the fortunate ones. But if you are that person that attaches who you are and your sense of well-being and accomplishment to the job that you have, then when you transition from that job, you are now looking at this as a void, a gaping hole, a gap, rather than a blank slate and an opportunity. I think I am going to do a session on that. I felt something in there. I got to have to do another a series on purpose and leadership and career. Yes, yes, yes. I just got that little inspiration. But we must prepare, just to wrap this point up, we must prepare people for the transitions that happen on both sides. Because just because it's a great opportunity doesn't mean that people won't experience fear, that people won't experience grief, that people won't experience even a sense of regret. So the things that we do to prepare them, to help them to feel comfortable, and until they get their bearings, we say, or find their balance, and get settled and grounded in what they're doing and get their rhythm, I like to call it, then we need to be there to support them, because we don't want people to fail. We don't want people to quit. I've seen instances where people have tried a leadership role, and because they weren't supported, because they didn't have preparation, they said, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to go back to being a non-management staff member. Like, I'm done with this. It's overrated. Forget me. And that's good. It's honest. But at the same time, you're left to wonder, did we really prepare that person or those people that make that decision? Did we prepare them adequately enough for that particular role? Oop. So, coaching challenge. Have you identified the next level of leaders in your organization, and how are they being prepared? You don't want to wait until it's crunch time. And when I mean crunch time, it's like 6 months out, 3 months out, 1 month out, and the role is vacating and you don't have a plan. You need to have a plan, sometimes as far as 2 years out or more, depending on the complexity of the role or the level of experience that's required. Sometimes you may have to identify that person or a couple of people, and they are working along or working very closely with that leader and then they may perhaps interview and see who gets that role. But we need to create a culture of transition, a culture of succession, so that it's not something that people fear, it's not something that people resist, but it's an expectation and it's a requirement of the role, that people can move on gracefully and people can assume roles in a supported and prepared way. Next week, we are going to talk mentorship, one of my favorite subjects, how we can use mentorship to grow future leaders. I am so excited about it. I love this. This is a very short series, but I believe it's an important one as we focus on the importance of leadership development. And we need to make this a very important part of our conversations in our organizations as we move forward. So now that I'm not sharing, I can see some of your comments. Hey, Kiran. Now we have gone MIA with each other. We need to catch up ASAP because I need you on this platform, sir. And I see here what you're saying, and this is so true. Another consideration alongside that transition is imposter syndrome. That is so true. Feeling like you are not adequate. You are, as we would say in the Bahamas, perpetrating a fraud, right? You feel like you're not ready. You feel like, I sound like and I look like I'm ready, but I really don't feel like I'm ready. That's a very important observation and very true. Very true. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for the support. I am going to do that. Ooh, purpose, leadership, and career. That is it. That's the next series. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with all of you. I'm glad you like that topic. Rain. Yeah, I love talking about mentorship. We don't do it enough. And I've always wanted to have a mentor. I mean, someone who would really invest and spend. And when I talk about invest, I'm talking about spending time, not so much spending money, but spending time. And so I'm grateful for the people that I can call on as resource people and people who can share, right? I'm really grateful for that. But to say having someone that I can call, a mentor that I could just pick up the phone and say, this person is, I can get advice. I don't know. I have people who do that. I can do that with, but I haven't had like that consistently. And so there are a lot of people, younger professionals, who reach out to me for the very same thing. And so because I didn't really have it, I want to share it with others. I want them to not feel that they're not supported, that they don't have someone, that a trusted advisor that they can talk with and bounce things off, not to clone, because you want them to find their own path, but we want them to do that in the best way possible. Absolutely. Yes. Smiling on the outside, screaming on the inside. That's definitely what imposter syndrome is like. So thank you, everyone. I am at the 30-minute mark. Thank you for joining us on whichever platform you are. That's LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. You're tuned in to Level Up for Limitless Leaders with Simone Elbow. I will see you next week as we talk about mentorship and growing future leaders. Oh, thank you, Athena. Talk soon, I hope.